All right, welcome back, guys. You are listening, you are watching the Brew Crew podcast. I'm here with my guys. This is a new format for us today. So hope you're enjoying it. How's everyone doing? It's
Hey, Dodie.
Friday.
I'm good.
Well, Friday for you, Saturday for me.
Oh yeah, that's right. Saturday for you.
Why is that, Euan?
We're patching in from New Zealand. Bright and sunny summer, other side of the world.
Gorgeous.
Is that just like a short-term vacation or?
So end of our last podcast, I guess it was a while ago since we did our last podcast, Lisa and I jumped on a plane and we've moved back to New Zealand. So on our way through, we did 4 weeks through Europe. So I'll tell you about our travel kit that we had on the way through. But yeah, a month or two ago, Lisa and I moved back to New Zealand just to be closer to family and be back here. So we're streaming in from New Zealand.
So I can imagine you're getting right into iced coffee season. What'd you have?
100%.
Oh yeah, loving it. Well, I'm
all
doing
of the ice pour overs, ice lattes. It's great.
We'll dive into what's in the cup. It's pretty eclectic today. I think Alex has the Topo Chico there.
We're rocking some Topo.
Absolutely. I'm actually rocking a can of Lagom draft iced latte. I went to a bachelor party last weekend and brought a kegerator for that, and I'm thinking about starting to use that for making my own at-home draft lattes, my own
like
my own
nitro
setup. Yeah,
cool.
So I'm going to start playing around with that. So we're doing some A/B testing. We're seeing what the local offerings are, but then also I have a bag here of Cloud City coffee roasting out of Seattle. Cloud City is a play on Star Wars, Cloud City. So for those of you looking forward to the Obi-Wan drop, leave a like, subscribe. We love you Star Wars nerds too on the channel.
Do you think coffee exists in the Star Wars universe?
Has to.
I mean, it has to, right?
Maybe that's a poll for the audience. Does coffee exist in the Star Wars universe?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm sure there's a similar drink. They're always drinking weird things and I feel like the movies, but maybe it's a good question. We'll wait for a James Hoffman overview of Star Wars coffee analysis. So yeah.
Alex, you got a featured bag for us?
Yeah, so I have a featured bag here. Well, there we go.
Please hold the product. Yeah.
Nice.
So this is Methodical. It's a Panama, and it's really the only reason I got it. I got it on Bottomless. Shout out. Is the producer is Edwin Rosas, which that's my last name. So I was like, we are probably related somewhere down the line. So you gotta support fellow Rosas. And that's the second Rosas farmer that I've actually seen before. I think the other one was from Campos Coffee Roasters. I think they're in Utah. So yeah, my second Rosas bag, but I haven't tried it yet because it's pretty freshly roasted, but it's a static cherry process, which I think is very similar to an anaerobic. I think that's maybe a Panama varietal, because I also just ordered some Luminous cold brew, and one of the cans is a static cherry process. So yeah, I will probably still have the bag next time we record, so I'll let you know how it is. The flavors: dark chocolate, cola, and earthy.
Not sure how I feel about that.
Like, I don't know how I feel, but I've had a Sumatra that was maybe along those lines, and it was really good. So, I mean, Methodicals does good stuff, so I'm sure it's good. And it wasn't the cheapest bag, so we'll see. We'll see how.
So Rosas comes from a long heritage of coffee producing. Maybe you just need to have some conversation with them about producing some more bright, flavorful, vibrant flavors.
And if this is your first time on the pod, we know you can't see Alex's last name in Zoom, but his last name is indeed Rosas.
Yes, no, I didn't put my last name there. Good point.
I'm drinking. I just finished a turbo shot espresso of some Manhattan beans. I bought one of the Koji processed beans a month or two ago, so I've been keeping a special lot in the freezer for days like today. It's really good.
Nice. And folks, Euan apparently has updated us. He has a kind of a chest freezer in his garage that is the meat freezer, but let's be real, it's his coffee storage freezer. So
We love to see it.
you may hear 1 to 2 months off of roast. That's because he has, the test tubes and he's freezing them. So maybe Euan will send us a picture of the actual shot of his freezer and I'll post it on here. But yeah, that is how Euan has
glamorous, but
yeah. He's building out his set. So
what will those decent owners do next? You never can tell. Euan, any idea what the TDS on the foam was of that on the steam?
I haven't quite got to the level of refractometers and TDS measurements. Maybe one day we'll see. I haven't quite crossed that threshold yet,
All right. Well, let's back up just a little bit. Instead of going hyper technical, you've just come back from 4 weeks of traveling in Europe, and you ran your travel kit through that whole experience. How was that?
Yeah, we did. It was great. So on our way back to New Zealand, we went through Europe for about 4 weeks, and had a chance to visit some pretty cool countries, some that had some amazing cafes. Had a chance to go and see Coffee Collective. I went to Nomad, bought some of the ceramic cups from Nomad. That was cool. The Nomad experience was amazing. It was really cool. So Barcelona, went to Copenhagen. Some of those had some amazing cafes, and then other countries like maybe Iceland and Ireland that didn't quite have the same level of specialty coffee. Yeah, I took my coffee kit, and that worked great. So I got this little bag here, and have my hand grinder, which worked great. This was the Option O Remy hand grinder. Some beans, a little scale, a Kaya Luna V60. But the part that was amazing was the mellow drip. This thing totally saved me, because every hotel that we went to or Airbnb, none of them had a gooseneck kettle. So this thing let me be able to brew with just a big standard kettle, and worked great. So yeah, it was amazing.
Broke down the heavier flow of just a regular kettle and dispersed it.
Yeah, otherwise you're pouring this big giant thing with this big heavy, flow of water. This just helps.
It's so small and packable.
Yeah, and then you can unscrew.
You can actually unscrew it, yeah. Which I didn't realize until earlier. And I don't know for sure, but I think the diameter of the mellow drip is very close to 58 millimeters, if not a little bit lower. So I have these little metal dosing tins, so I can unscrew it and put the mellow drip inside the tin, or you can fit it inside of a cup. So it's not as, awkwardly L-shaped to try to fit in. So
even more packable.
Pretty cool. I mean, you could say it's ripe for a powder coating job, essentially.
That's true.
Which I think some people have done.
The thing that I found super fascinating was some people talk about the fact that water affects the flavor of coffee enormously. And some people go way down that rabbit hole of mixing their own chemicals and things to create their own water recipes for different kinds. I've never gone to that level. It's a whole nother step. But I did find, I'd never really tested that. But when we were in Europe, I found that every country that I went to, the coffee that I was brewing with exactly the same beans and exactly the same gear tasted completely different in Ireland than it did in Barcelona or in Ireland. And so I'm assuming that it was just the water that was different in the different places, and the chemical makeup of it, I guess, totally changed the flavor. It was kind of eye-opening. It was pretty fascinating.
Right, because it's probably Europe again has a lot harder water. I don't know. I forget. I was actually looking at this because I was looking at which bottled waters were good for espresso, and there's SCA has a rating for TDS, a range. And Crystal Geyser, a lot of people use, especially in the La Marzocco community, they use Crystal Geyser exclusively. But then I also looked into Crystal Geyser has several different bottling plants throughout the United States. And each bottling plant is pulling it from a different source. So I think we're on the West Coast, and I think we have the most ideal. It's a little bit softer than SCA. range, but it's pulled from Mount Shasta. Essentially, I think it's bottled in Weed, California.
Yeah, the Weed California water.
Yeah. So and it's labeled, but I didn't really like think about that you have to kind of check, oh, where is this water being bottled from? And those companies obviously disclose, hey, here's the TDS, count inside of this water. So I imagine, yeah, Europe is just probably way higher than kind of that standard. So they probably definitely have to treat it. But if you're from Europe, let us know, because I have no clue what brewing in Europe is like. So, but did the coffee taste good, Euan?
Yeah, it was great. I was brewing a bunch of different beans. Took some from Proud Mirror in my way over. Bought some from Nomad, some from Coffee Collective, a bunch of locations. Yeah, it was great.
Awesome. Well, I have a couple kind of new gadgets to show. So first we have the Oria V3. This is a flat bottom brewer, obviously. It's beautiful. Sized for the Kalita 185. It's all made out of, it's a form of plastic, but it's apparently has really good heat retention. And it has a very big opening on the bottom. So I think the significance with this brewer is that it's supposed to be just a really fast flowing Kalita wave, essentially, with really good heat retention. So similar to, let's say, the Stag X, which Euan and I weren't able to really like dial in to a point that we liked it, but
it looks really vertical.
Yeah. And so you have pretty low clogging. You can grind finer. And I think it just gives you more control over how you brew. And it comes with this little plastic piece that's like recycled plastic. And it just snaps into the bottom here. And then that's how you set it up. So it looks cool. I've actually been getting some really good brews out of it. They have some like recipes that they suggest. So trying some of Lance's suggestions. And I don't have it yet, but you can get a little tool called the Negotiator, which is essentially shaped like the inside of this. And I'll put a picture up. So you can put like a Kalita filter in here, and then you essentially stick it in, and it kind of compacts the paper so it's fully flat against the walls. What that will do is it makes it so it's now a no bypass brewer, which essentially means water can't get around the filter and skip brewing in the coffee. So, and I've heard that that's kind of an even more optimal kind of way to brew with it, and it just can kind of help your extraction. So, I'm getting one of those printed soon. But
I was going to ask, is that a tool that you can 3D print yourself?
Yeah. So they made the files for free. You can buy it from someone if you want, if you don't have a printer, but they made the files open source. So
cool.
Some people are using the basic one. Other people have kind of experimented and made like ones that are kind of hollowed out, so that as you're pouring water in it, it like funnels water to the bottom and like fully gets it. Like you can wet the paper while it's in. Kind of interesting. I'm sure that has to be heat resistant filament, but yeah. So I got this. It's pretty cool. It's great for travel too, because it's like super light. I saw in, I think the UK Brewers Cup Championships, people were like attaching these to their backpacks on like little like drawstring things, and it's like, you're just walking around, go and do a shop. Hey, what brew do you got? All right, pull out your Oria that you have like on a little string. So
ready to rock.
Kind of cool. I was skeptical because I thought this was like, oh, it's kind of like the next origami, like, Instagram fodder. Like everyone has one. If you don't have an Oria, you're missing out. There are obvious. It's just, at the end of the day, it's just a brewer, right? It's just a flat bottom brewer with high flow. You can relatively achieve similar things with other things like an origami or, different types of flat bottom brewers. But I was like, I had a gift card, so I was like, why not? I'll just try it out. So yeah, I like it. I'm a believer. So if you're interested in it, I don't think you would regret buying that. And then the other thing, we have the Comandante C40.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So we had the Kinu, and then this. They're pretty similar. The Kinu I do like. I still have it. Give it to a friend to use. And so essentially the difference is, I think, in the cup at the end of the day, this just does have a little bit more clarity, which I had heard. But I think the Kinu versus this just do things a little bit differently. So the Kinu has a little bit more body. Depends on kind of what kind of coffee you're making, right? But I've had really good coffees out of this. And then I even had like an espresso that I've done. And I made one for Jake. That was pretty good.
What did we brewed the
that was Olympia coffee.
Oh,
it was an Ecuador rum barrel aged natural anaerobic.
Yeah.
It's a really long title.
It was amazing.
Yeah. It's like $2 for a shot of espresso type of coffee, but it was really good. So
one of the things I love about the C40 is that because it's so many people have it, so widely adopted, that there's such a standard around it, right? Like often when people are brewing and they're creating a recipe, they'll share, okay, this was however many 14 clicks on the C40,
right?
And it's this kind of universal standard which you can use to communicate what your grind setting is relative across grinders.
Yeah, and the system for it is just this little knob down here. So rather than being a stepless feature, which is what the Kinu is like, which I think in terms of possibilities, you have more grind range on that. Sure. But you can just say, like, you know, if Euan and I had a C40, I could say, hey, try this coffee and put it at 24 clicks. And it's just rotations on here that you just adjust it to. And so, yeah, it's been nice. I was able to kind of make a conversion chart with the Kinu from some people who were brewing the same recipe with both. So I kind of figured out like, oh, a Kinu is at 3.9 rotations is right around a 24 on the C40. But it is just a lot easier to kind of simplify, like, you know, 19 clicks. Usually the range for pour over is like 19 to 25. I find what I've used so far. So I remember, so it's been nice. And it is a little bit smaller. So you can just take it apart and it's like that.
That's nice.
Versus the Kinu was like pretty tall and heavy.
I remember watching this cool video. Someone, maybe it was European Coffee Trip, or I forget who it was. Maybe we'll find and post a link in the notes below. But there was a really interesting tour of the factory of how they produce the Comandante C40, and they kind of talk through the manufacturing process, and I found that really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think both Kinu and Comandante, obviously, both in Germany, and it's like when I think just looking at this build quality, I mean, it's so precise. And I think the biggest thing, like if you look at the burr spin here, like that is just so like zero tolerance essentially. And like the burrs are just really well machined and all that. And so I think they take high quality, or they take a lot of pride in the craftsmanship, which I think contributes to the price. But yeah, I mean, if I've been obviously, you know, thought it was a cool grinder, but then actually using it, it's like, you know, I understand the hype behind it.
Would you say you've arrived now? Like, is this going to be your forever hand grinder?
Yeah, I think probably. So this is interesting. I don't know if you've seen it, you in your decent forums. There's been people who are now looking at dual hand grinders. So it's a hand grinder that has a burr up top, and it does an initial grind. And then the beans drop down and they go through a secondary set of burrs. So they have two burrs and a hand grinder, and apparently, I don't know, it's the next best thing. I feel like at that point, are we hitting diminishing returns, right? Or is it truly better? Who knows? There's always innovation in the coffee space, but yeah. So I think that's, at least for now, it's been great. I've seen you can get motorized, like little motors that you can attach it to, so you can turn it into an electric one, but that's like, those are way too expensive for what it is. So it's a hand grinder. So just hand grind it, right?
Yeah.
But,
yeah. Well, talking about burrs, pretty interesting this week. So the company Option O, who makes the hand grinder we were talking about before, the P64, and then also the Lagom Mini, maybe a couple of weeks ago, a month or so ago, they announced an initiative that they're working on, that they wanted to do a community kind of beta testing project. So they were in the process of designing some replacement burrs for their smaller Lagom Mini. And they wanted to have a handful of people kind of test out those burrs as a part of that testing process. get some feedback before they do sort of a full manufacturing run. So I entered the draw, I guess, to be able to be selected to be a part of that beta testing, and I was selected, which is really cool. So earlier this week, the new burrs arrived for the Lagom Mini. So I've been testing those this week, and it's been really fun. So they're called the Moonshine, it's the Moonshine beta testing group, I guess, which is pretty cool. So
Cool.
I took a couple of pictures. Maybe we can post them now in the, behind the video, but they're these, it's a different kind of manufacturing process, and they're uncoated like some of the other burrs that they have. So these ones have this sort of polished finish, and I guess they want to test the impact that has on flavor. And so, yeah, they're this sort of polished, shiny look, which is quite cool. So I installed those earlier this week, and been doing some brewing and testing them out with the goal of providing some feedback to Option O.
Nice. What's been first of all, like I would have hoped they would have, given you the burrs, because you own almost every Option O grinder out there,
all their
except for one. But what's been the initial, I guess, flavor differences that you've noticed? So in Kyle Russell's Discord, someone in there got a pair of the Moonshines, and he was saying that he's initial thoughts is that really likes them. The clarity and juiciness and flavor is even more than the C40, which is interesting because a lot of people were comparing those mini burrs to the C40 burrs because it has 7 like spokes on the edge. But yeah, what's been your kind of initial feedback on it?
Yeah, I'm still pretty early in my testing, so I want to make sure that I give some informed feedback, like actually have some considered versus just a couple of brews. But off from the offset, yeah, I've noticed that I was really impressed with the grind consistency. Often for burrs, they need a seasoning period. You need to grind through a bunch of coffee before the burrs get to a lot of consistency in the grind. And immediately I was really impressed with how consistent the grind is. That was surprising. Yeah, I think same thing. I found that there was a lot of clarity. I'm still working out what the body kind of impact on the body was. It seemed like there was both high clarity, but also a stronger body in it than what I was used to with the prior Obsidian burrs. So still need to do some more testing to find out, kind of make an informed understanding, but I've been impressed so far. Yeah. Nice. For anyone that's interested, this is what these are the old burrs. Obviously the new burrs are in the grinder at the moment, but these are the, I guess they're kind of hard to see in the light, but these are the 48 millimeter Obsidian burrs. So here's the,
they have like a coating, I guess, on it, right?
Yeah. Yep. I forget what it's called.
I think it's a TIN,
but I
whatever,
forget what it stands for. Yeah. Yep. So this has
it sounds
this
fancy.
Is manufactured, and then has a coating over the top, which extends the life of the burrs and a few different things like that, which is also what gives it this colored look, the black on it. Whereas the Moonshine beans don't have that coating, which is one of the things that's different in the manufacturing process. Yeah.
Nice.
Stay tuned for more.
Stay tuned for
maybe
more.
Maybe we'll have Euan, once you have like some developed thoughts, you'll do like a little reel, and you can just, obviously we're not there unless we flew to New Zealand to come just test some burrs, but yeah, maybe we'll have Euan do like a little, like, thoughts, a little update on it. So that's cool though. And I think that makes that mini grinder even more enticing, that you have like more kind of burr options. Kind of
it's so impressive. I really love this little guy. It's so small, it's portable. It just has this little power outlet. Power worked in the States and in New Zealand. Yeah, the quality of the grind and the consistency and the taste really that it produces for such a physically small grinder and relatively affordable grinder is really impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. What would be crazy is if down the road they come out with a burr set and a conversion kit to turn it into a flat burr. So if somehow they could like build a little plate that you would install and then they had like flats, that could be pretty crazy. Because then I mean, why would you ever need to consider a fellow ode or anything else for like a brew grinder if you have such, I don't know. That's cool. I appreciate that they're innovating. Good
Maybe like 2 brew chambers, right? Where like it goes through a set of normal burrs and then
maybe
flat
what about
burrs.
conical at the top, flat at the bottom?
Yeah. And then a tamper right down below. So.
Right. Yeah, in partnership with what's the
we know who everyone knows.
The auto tamper, yeah.
Pour stamp. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Puck press.
Yeah. Puck press. Well, I don't have nearly as much exciting news, but I did get my hands recently on a Porigami, so I tested that, threw that in the bag for my travel setup, and then also started it's like pulling teeth with me, but just added the puck screen to my workflow, which has been I'm way behind the curve, but I've really enjoyed the consistency of cleanup. Number one, I've noticed that you kind of have to like push on one end of the puck screen to like loosen it, like from the suction, and then knock that out, and then knock your coffee out, and then I just leave it on the tray underneath the group head when I'm rinsing, and it gets clean enough. So yeah, it's been unwilling but good addition.
Have you noticed any changes in the flavor? Like, has it reduced channeling for you?
Definitely reduced channeling, definitely improved shot quality. Hasn't been maybe just like a very slight adjustment to the grind with the niche. Haven't seen a ton of variance there, like from before the puck screen and after.
Nice, but
I do have big news coming in the coffee space for me, but I will have to save it for another podcast.
Well, we didn't talk about this. This is exciting.
Nothing
what a
today.
cliffhanger.
Nothing today.
Wow. You heard it right here, folks. I mean, pretty
how
soon
long?
It's gonna
how long do the viewers have to wait, Dodie, until we find out?
It might be a few episodes.
Okay.
It might be a few episodes.
Okay.
Just know, I see these guys making moves, and I can't let myself fall too far behind.
Yeah, but Euan and I have very steady changes. Jake's like saving it all up, and then bam,
all at once.
I'm more of an erratic.
It's gonna be an episode with just Jake at that point.
There we go.
Yeah. Nice. Well, I know we're getting a little bit long here, so let's maybe chat about. I know we kind of had SCA, the Specialty Coffee Association convention in Boston, was, I don't know, maybe a few weeks ago, and we just didn't have an episode to talk about it, but there's some kind of cool things that were shown there, and we could kind of talk about it and just see our thoughts. I know we wrote some down. Maybe start, and you have more, information on Weber and all that they do, but they came out with this portafilter called the Weber Unifilter, right? And so I think the concept of it is it's the world's first unibody portafilter. So normally you would have like a basket, right? Like a VST basket or whatever. You have to drop that in, but this is just fully machined in. So it's one piece, which I believe at the bottom, you get more surface area than to pull your espresso. So kind of interesting. I think it fits on a lot of different machines. I think right now it's actually, it's sold out from when it launched.
It's been pretty cool. It's been pretty controversial, right? Because it talks about all these benefits of it being a single kind of manufactured portafilter. So that gives you, as you're saying, like a bigger surface area, larger extraction area, which a lot of people say is really fascinating. On the other end, people are like up in arms that they've been designing and selling this $400, I think, portafilter.
Yeah, it's $365 for the rubber one, $395 if you want a wood handle.
Yeah,
Wild.
So some people are like they're
this is pretty
designing
crazy.
A product to solve a problem that doesn't exist, and it's kind of controversial. It's going to be really interesting to see when some people have had it in hand for a longer period of time and release some reviews. People like Lance Hedrick, I'm really interested to see. I mean, no doubt, Weber Workshops manufacture some incredible products. Like the manufacturing process, the build quality of them is really great. But whether it's improves quality and taste and those kinds of things enough to justify the cost, it'll be interesting to see.
And also
Right.
just the lack of versatility, right? You know, you're going to get your basket size, your basket depth. Like there's no, the beauty of like a bottomless portafilter is you can swap in baskets, you can change things, you can add components. And this is like, you're paying all this money and you're locked into whatever you got.
That's true. Yeah,
So
one dose size. Although on the other side of that, like it's really great to see people continue to innovate in the
yeah,
specialty coffee space. So I'm definitely supportive of that. I think there's probably a bunch of ideas that we haven't really considered that it's great to see people innovating in. So yeah, it's controversial.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Lance had a unofficial product. He had a kind of a custom product that he did with Breville.
unveiling.
Yeah, an unveiling that like I think everyone, me especially, I was like freaking out about because it's so cool. So Lance essentially has a Breville dual broiler that he mods to act like a Slayer, right? So he changes I think the steam wand lever to actually control the flow. So you can go from 2 bars, you can actually pull like flow profile options, which then makes the Breville dual broiler really appealing to a lot of people because it's priced at like 1,500, whereas you have to get easily up to like, you know, $3,000 to get a flow profiling machine. And the Breville stuff is just so like well built and industrial for the home kind of use. So he essentially had kind of like created a Lance Hedrick, you know, dual broiler flow profiling machine with different flow profiles program into some of the buttons as well. So if you want like the classic like Londinium style, you know, lever machine, and then also like it connects to the Akai scale over Bluetooth. So everyone was kind of wondering like, is
Pretty
this
cool.
a new product? I think it was just a one-off thing, but I think the coffee community by and large is kind of big fans of it. So it could be cool if this turns into something that that actually becomes a production run. I would maybe consider getting one if it weren't gold and white, just because I didn't like the way that looked. But I would maybe consider getting one in kind of a scenario where it's like, it's kind of just a nice, simple, like, I don't know, you know, part of all the gear that we have, you kind of just want to live the simple life sometimes, you know, but
it would go to the top of the
appealing.
list of when someone says, what should I get? I want to buy my first espresso machine. You tell them a Breville, but then you tell them, get this one though.
Right. Like I was telling someone the other day who has a Breville Barista Express and like, you know, likes espresso, but maybe isn't as like deep into it as maybe we are. I was like, your probably end game machine is going to be the dual broiler by Breville because it's going to be a similar workflow. You'll be familiar with it, and it's going to be really good. It's going to be stellar. 58 millimeter portafilter and all that, and so.
One other thing that totally agree.
Super
one
cool.
other thing that machine does, which I think is really fascinating, is the ability to do gravimetric shots, meaning it can connect over Bluetooth to a set of Akai Luna scales and automatically stop the shot when it hits. I think they pre-programmed it to 51 grams for a turbo shot that's kind of pre-programmed.
Right, yeah,
the buttons.
Programmed turbo shot.
And that's
which
super
why would you
fascinating.
get a decent? You know?
Well, that's one of the things that I love the most about the Decent is an like automatic stop based on weight. It's a bit unclear at the moment to me whether you have any control over being able to change what that weight is that it stops at and some of the flexibility like that. But even if you can't, that concept as a whole, being able to integrate that into, I'm not sure what the price would be or if it's even going to be available, but perhaps a sub $2,000 machine where that isn't really available outside of the Decent, other than these enormous multi-group head, commercial machines. That's a really great feature.
Yeah, no, I think it's really cool. I'm interested. I feel like Lance has maybe teased, like, if you want it to happen, like you got to contact Breville. So I think,
well, I guess
if
that's
I
the next
were Breville,
question.
It seems like a smart money move to do that, right?
Sure. So
like,
it's not available to purchase at the moment, right? But it's possible that they'll release it. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I think
they want to see the hype response.
Yeah, I think in Lance's video, he contacted the Breville I forget the guy's name, and was like, hey, I want to do this. And they were like, yeah, let's do it, which I think is so cool for a big company like that to have that flexibility to kind of like actually listen to its users and like be like, hey, we recognize Lance is the GOAT in terms of Breville. Like, let's work with him. So yeah, no, it's super cool. We're probably getting to the time where Zoom is going to cut us off. But last thing, because I think this maybe applies to some of our listeners, is the Baratza Encore ESP, which essentially is a Baratza Encore, which pretty much everyone has seen. It's kind of like the first grinder you get, right? But this is designed to work with espresso. So you at a time with your previous employer, they had like an espresso machine in a Baratza Encore.
That's right.
And I got to try it too. And it was so hard to dial in espresso. And it took minutes, like 3 minutes to grind 19 grams, like
Yikes.
Crazy. So there's people who want to do that, but they also don't know any better. They don't know like, oh, I shouldn't be grinding espresso on an Encore. But I think this is kind of like a slight shift that Breville made to say like, hey, let's have something so people can do espresso. So it, 40 millimeter burrs. It uses the M2 burrs that's in the Virtuoso. And I think it just has better kind of grinding controls so you can dial that in. So that's kind of cool. I think that's like a great, like, hey, I need a grinder. Great. Here's a relatively low cost option to get into espresso. So yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I just thought it was kind of an interesting call out. But
there probably is more, but we'll save it for the next episode and do a new product roundup. Sure. Thanks all for tuning in. Brew Crew Podcast out.